for Danny Tarkanian or Stephen Horsford. You can reach us at 702-258-3552. That's 258-3552. You can also post your questions or comments at knprtalk.org. That's knprtalk.org. Danny Tarkanian, your website says the economy is the top issue and that you know how to create jobs. If you are elected to U.S. Congress, what would you do to create jobs in Nevada?
Well, that's a sort of a different question. Let's talk about nationally first, then we can get into specific things for Nevada, because there's a little bit of an overlap, but there are some specific things we could do in Nevada. First of all, everywhere I go around my district, and it's a very diverse district. It's the largest district in the state and the most diverse, with a lot of urban Clark County, a lot of rural Nevada, which has some farming, mining, ranching. So, you're talking to different business people with a wide range of issues. And virtually every time I go, you hear the same things. First thing is this: the regulations that are currently being imposed by the current administration are just strangleholding businesses. They're crushing businesses from one being able to expand, or other ones that are trying to start new businesses. There's been more regulations imposed in this current administration than any other administration in the history of our country. I think we need to go back to a balancing act. We do need regulations.
So it's just a matter of the government getting out of the way.
Well, no, not completely. You need regulations. You got to have. We're in a civilized society. We need to have certain regulations, but I think there should be a balancing act in the regulations.
Okay,
you should look at.
Go ahead. Please finish.
You should look at the benefit that the regulations are providing, whether it's for environmental issues or employee safety or whatever else, and balance that to the cost that it's having to businesses that will result in less job creation. See, right now we are in a crisis for jobs, and there needs to be a balancing act where we take the regulations to see how they're affecting the jobs and balance that with the benefits.
So could you give us an example of a government regulation that is doing that kind of harm?
Sure. Yesterday I was at Buddy Bird Underground. It's called Bird Underground, and he's been in business for over 2 decades. And he's got a lot of equipment that, they do the underground work in construction. The EPA has imposed a new restriction on the emissions for their equipment, which is going to make their equipment obsolete by 2014. Now imagine being in the construction business here in Nevada with the job opportunities decreasing as much as they've had, and all of a sudden the government tells you, hey, you can't use your equipment anymore in 2 more years, that you're going to have to buy new equipment, and no one's going to buy your old equipment because all around the country it's obsolete. So what is he going to do? He's told me that he can't buy new equipment. He's going to have to close his business down if this regulation isn't changed, and he's going to have to lay off all those workers. That's those type of regulations just don't make sense.
On the other hand, isn't there a trade-off in that? I mean, aren't consumers being protected somehow in environmental protections?
Sure, there already are emission standards for the equipment. Again, it's when you raise emission standards where you're taking over and above to what our current equipment has, when the rest of the world is not applying the same emission standards. It's sort of funny how we sit here and we complain about how we're outsourcing jobs and China's economy is growing and ours isn't. But we're going to impose these higher burdens on our businesses at the worst economic time in our country's history. But at the same time, China and these other countries are not. So they're going to create the same environmental problems that are arguably what's happening here. And we're going to have the same effect environmentally, but we're going to lose the jobs anyways. Doesn't make sense to me.
All right, so you've spoken of regulations and the role they're playing in this. What about creation of jobs? What would you do for Nevada?
Let me get to the 3 things I talk about. If you could just let me talk for 1 second, then I'll get into them. First thing is regulations. You go around, you talk to businesses, they say the regulations. We talked about that. The second thing they tell me is the uncertainty that's created in this environment. The uncertainty, one, with what kind of new regulations are going to be in there. That's one thing. The other uncertainty is with respect to the healthcare laws and how that's going to be applied. Even though the healthcare law was passed, a lot of the implementation of it, the vast majority of it, is by the agencies themselves, and the businesses don't know exactly how it's going to be applied and what the cost is going to be. So there's uncertainty there, and there's uncertainty in the tax system. What's going to be their tax base of what they're going to have to pay based upon whatever happens before January 1st with the fiscal cliff or not. So I go around the businesses, they say we need certainty. You can't expect us to create additional business or hire new workers if we don't know what our overhead's going to be. So we need to create certainty. And then the third thing is basically we got to get back to a fairer tax system so that everybody's paying their fair share of it, and there aren't the special loopholes and benefits that are being provided to certain groups. You do those 3 things, and I believe that you can help businesses, small businesses, which create 80% of the workers' jobs in our economy, will start hiring people again. That's the one thing. And then if I can get to the second thing, I know you want to ask a couple questions. But the second thing is, what can we do as a government that can help create jobs? We just talked about, the type of regulations and rules and certainty and so forth. But there's two things that I think the federal government has a responsibility for and should be more involved in that can help create millions of jobs, billions of dollars in tax revenue. First and foremost, we should be energy independent here in our country. We have the resources here in our country to be so. We have the resources to do it, and actually in North Dakota right now, they are the most prosperous state in the union because they are taking advantage of the shale oil and gas reserves that are underground, and they're exporting it.
But that's all fair enough, Danny Tarkanian, but the North Dakota situation, where the unemployment rate's really low and people are flocking there, that doesn't create jobs in Nevada.
Yeah, but again, as I just told you before we started, and again, if you'd like, I'm trying to give you some policy ideas as opposed to just bantering back and forth. I said when we started, I'm going to talk about the national issues first, which does carry over to Nevada, because when people have jobs in other parts of the country and there's more wealth there, more people are going to come and visit Nevada with the tourism.
Okay.
So again, become energy independent. I guess I don't have to go any longer on that. You understand that we have the resources here in our country to be energy independent for over 100 years with the new oil and gas reserves, with the different other resources there. Okay, it would create billions of dollars in tax revenue, and it would probably lower the energy costs, which again would save people money where they would have discretionary to come to Nevada to spend their money here. Second thing we need to do, and I'm a big believer in this, in that the federal government is responsible for building the infrastructure of our country and maintaining it and improving it. I believe we should be investing in roads, highways, bridges, dams. Those are things the federal government should be responsible for. Now, President Obama put part of that in his stimulus package, but a lot of it was given to special groups that had given him large donations in his campaign, the Solyndra and some of those. Others were given with the directive from the federal government telling the states how they should spend the money, whether it was actually improving the infrastructure or not. And I'll give you an example of that if you don't mind.
Very briefly, yes.
Sure. Well, these I think are important issues. There was some money given to the state of Nevada to beautify an off-ramp on the 215. It was like $700,000, and it was one of the earmarks that Senator Colburn questioned and said, was it really relevant? I would rather have seen that $700 given to the Department of Transportation, and then let the Department of Transportation decide how best to spend that money. Maybe it would have been to widen the freeway to L.A., or maybe to help get the one started to Phoenix. I mean, we in Nevada know what's best for our transportation.
Fair enough. But at the same time, Democrats have often said that the Republican House has obstructed a lot of economic efforts by the president. The U.S. House refused to pass the president's jobs bill and tax cuts for small business. Should the U.S. House continue to block President Obama's tax cuts for small business?
I don't know what specific bills you're referring to and what excuse me, what items were attached to it. As you know, there's always those additional whatever pork items attached to it, and why those bills weren't done.
Should the U.S. House continue to do that, though?
I would just love to be able to finish if you just give me a chance.
Oh, fair enough.
So I don't know what those bills were specifically, but I do believe that all the House, the Senate, and the President have to work together to get things accomplished. We are at a crisis in our country. We need to have some cooperation. There has to be some give and take, and we need to be able to and again, what I believe is what Reagan said all along, that if you have an issue you feel important, Reagan said, I'm going to take it to the public. I'm going to explain why we need it done. He's going to get the public behind it. And more often than not, he had it done. But don't forget now, you always hear the Democrats' argument that it's a House that's obstructed President Obama's plans, but President Obama had almost 2 full years of basically one-party representation. They controlled the House, they had 59 senators, and they controlled the White House. So they were able to pass a health care bill. They were able to pass a stimulus package. He passed whatever he wanted. If he thought some of these other bills are really important, he could have passed at that time. And that's my biggest criticism in the president, is he came into the White House with one clear directive, and that it was to create jobs for the people of Nevada, because we needed jobs. We were in an economic crisis. And instead of concentrating on that, he concentrated instead on health care and some other issues.
So what's your policy on extending the Bush tax cuts? Should people like Mitt Romney, who's quite well off, pay a lower percentage than people who make, say, $50,000 a year?
I think the tax code's completely unfair, and it needs to be revised. It's 73,000 pages, littered with special deductions and tax credits provided to people who can afford the best attorney and know and can. Well, let me finish for a second, please.
But I'm not getting a direct answer. I mean,
you are.
What's your policy on extending the tax cuts? Should they or shouldn't they?
If you give me a chance, I could explain. Again, you want a short one statement talking points, and I'm trying to give you some substantive stuff. So I'm getting into the tax code. The tax code, 73,000 pages, is littered with special deductions and interests that basically the wealthy people take advantage and the others don't. So I was going to ask you, do you think Mitt Romney or Warren Buffett is going to pay more in taxes if you raise his rate from 36% to 39%? They're only paying 14% now anyways. Of course not, because they're taking advantage of the tax credits and tax breaks. My answer to the problem is to get rid of those special tax breaks and credits that we are providing to people because they have more influence with the legislatures that pass these things so they can have a lesser amount. It's almost comical to hear Democrats argue that if you raise the rate 3%, Mitt Romney is going to pay more, or Warren Buffett's going to pay more. They're not. They're going to have the same deductions. You got to take care of those first.
Now, President Obama said he won't sign a bill unless taxes are raised on the rich, and you're kind of alluding that those earning over $250,000. So, would you prefer to see all rates go up, or is that a time to compromise with the president?
If the rates go up, there's not going to be any more revenue, or very little revenue. If you get rid of the deductions, you're going to see much more revenue. The answer is making it a level playing field so everybody gets the same benefits from the deductions, that we don't have special deductions given to special interest groups based upon how much money they've given to their congressmen or senators. That's the answer, and that's what I'll go in and work with whoever the president is in this next election.
Yeah, well, if you're just joining us, we're talking with Danny Tarkanian. He is the Republican candidate for the newly created 4th Congressional District. If you have questions for Danny Tarkanian, tell us what issues are important to you. You can call us at 258-3552. That's 258-3552. You can also reach us online at knprtalk.org. I want to touch briefly about the whole case of the $17 million judgment against you. Patrick Kulikin and the Sun and John L. Smith in the RJ wrote that the government could well prevail, and one of them, I think, if not both of them, said it might be an embarrassment for Nevada if you were elected and then had to leave Congress because of bankruptcy. Are you at risk of bankruptcy?
Come on. First of all, Kulikan is the most liberal and biased reporter in the city, so whatever he says is discounted and there isn't anything to it. John L. Smith was actually quoting things that Harry Reid had stated, and everybody knows that Harry Reid is about as biased and partisan as you can get, and everybody knows I ran against Harry Reid last time, and this is a political thing. I went on the show, I believe in the primary, we talked about this issue, and I explained it very clearly then, but I mean, I don't have a problem going through it again because I've been open and transparent about it, okay? My family and I, there was 11 of us, we invested in a real estate deal. We had one of our partners worked for a developer in Southern California. That partner had already invested with that developer, and he kept vouching for him, telling how great it was. We did some due diligence. We went down and visited the place. We did all the stuff. July 23rd, we decided to do the loan. The developer has a friend at the bank who lends us, and the bank lends us money. We give it to the developer. We never even got the money. It was all done, in one transaction. On July 23rd, the bank lends us money. We lend it to the developer, and he's supposed to use that money to develop the property in Southern California. August 1st, the developer defaults on giving us our interest payment. He stops all work on the property and files bankruptcy a few months later. And then in the meantime, we find out that part of the money we had lent the developer went to pay back the same bank who loaned us money, but that money was paid back with a default loan the developer had. We feel we were defrauded. That's why we have a court system. You go through the courts, you let the judges decide. Well, the federal government came in and closed down the bank, making some of the same claims that we did, that the bank had committed unsound and unsavory loan practices. So we think, now even the federal government agrees with us. No, now they want to come after us personally. They do. Let me finish, please. So then they do, and we use a fraud as a defense. We felt we were defrauded. Well, before we even get a chance to make that argument, the district court says, no, there's a federal statute out there that says unless the fraud is specifically written in the document itself, you can't use fraud as a defense against the federal government. So he rules against us, and that's where we stand right now. We think that ruling is wrong, that's taking our property without due process of law. So under our rights as American citizens, we've appealed it to the Ninth Circuit, and that hearing will be done in a year or 2 years, however long it takes to go through an appeal process. And at that time, we'll see if we prevail or not. Our attorney feels very confident that we're going to prevail on it. I got to trust my attorney. That's why we retain him. He's very good. So all this other speculation about what's going to happen if X, Y, or Z happens is all premature, and it's all done for partisan politics. I've been open up front about it, and I can't be any more than that.
Now, Senator Reid told us on Tuesday in an interview that he helped to set up a meeting between your family and the FDIC, and that the FDIC stood by its judgment against you. He also
that's not true, though. I mean, most of what Harry Reid says isn't true.
So you're saying the FDIC didn't stand by its judgment, or that he didn't?
No, the FDIC is still negotiating a settlement with us right now. So what is he talking? You got to understand. I mean, listen. I mean, let's put it in perspective. I mean, you can. I understand your responsibility as a host is to put me on the hot spot, but be upfront and honest about it. Does anybody listening honestly think that Harry Reid, 3 weeks out from the campaign, all of a sudden decided to weigh in on this judgment deal when he's been involved in this for over 2 years? My mother and father wanted to go and see him. I told him, Mom, Dad, he's not going to do anything for you. I just ran against him. He's going to use it politically. And they said, no, he won't. He's been a friend of ours. No, he won't. Well, now he's come in and he's used it politically. The federal, right now we are in settlement talks with the FDIC, court order settlement talks by the Ninth Circuit. That's where we're at right now. So the statement you just made is completely false.
He also said that told us that you personally guaranteed to repay the $17 million loan no matter what.
It's not no matter what. If they fulfilled if the developer and the bank had fulfilled their contractual responsibilities, we would be obligated to repay the loan. They didn't. They took our money and used it to pay back a loan the developer was defaulting with the bank. That's where the fraud is. And that's why you have a court system. You let the courts determine that.
He also said, in there, the FDIC is protecting American taxpayers by insisting that you pay the debt. If the debt is in fact found to be yours, why shouldn't you be liable for it?
Well, sure. If the debt is ours and we were not defrauded, then obviously we should be. But again, you're again taking statements that Senator Reid is using as a partisan attack against me and trying to give credibility to him, and that's not true. We have a system in our American jurisprudence that you go to court and you let the judges decide what happens. And we're in the Ninth Circuit Court. They're going to decide whether, first of all, we should be able to use a fraud as a defense, and then if so, if we were defrauded. Honestly, you can sit here today, and I understand you want to put me on the hot seat. Do you think it's fair? Let's just say everything that we were defrauded. Let's just assume we were. That should be decided by a jury. But let's say we were. Do you think it's fair that we should not have fraud as a defense just because the bank committed unsavory loan practices and the FDIC took it over? Should we lose that defense?
Well, that's as it may be, but the judge in the case has said that you're going to have to post the full amount as bail. Do you have $17 million?
Again, you're wrong on what you state. And I just, I understand this is a big political thing. You want to make a story out of it. That's not accurate. The judge hasn't determined that yet. We had a hearing on it. He hasn't ruled on it. Where are you getting that from?
He's not set any kind of bail.
No, bail.
Or bond. I beg your pardon. Not bail.
He hasn't. We had a hearing on August 23rd. He hasn't ruled on it yet. So again, please just get the facts straight and we can discuss them. That's not accurate.
Okay. We're talking with Danny Tarkanian, and if you have questions about his candidacy for the 4th Congressional District, he is running against Democrat Stephen Horsford, you can reach us at 258-3552. That's 258-3552, or write to us at knprtalk.org. Some other issues I want to ask you a little bit about.
That's good.
Your website says that also says we need, in the website's words, quoting here, to stop the flow of illegal aliens, end quote, because they're eroding the economy and the infrastructure and the rule of law. What more needs to be done to secure the border?
We're not securing it all right now. I guess we're doing a little bit of a better job than we have in some years past, at least from the numbers of what of people that are being deported. But that's not really securing the borders. That's people, I guess, they found here already. They have new technologies. I don't have the answer. What's the cost-efficient, best approach to secure the borders? Whether it's building a fence, which I think probably is the older way you may have done it. This new technology that they have that would maybe be more efficient. That's something that we, as a country, obviously we all should agree upon. Forget the fact of we need to have a protected borders to have a secure country. So we should all agree upon that. Let's figure out the best approach that will secure the borders, that's cost effective, and then go ahead and do it. I think most people would agree with that.
So what should we do with the undocumented immigrants who are already here? Should we try to deport them?
No, I never said we should deport them. I don't think that this is a country that's going to hire people to knock on doors and look under beds and try to find people here illegally, and I've never advocated that. I think it's unrealistic. Again, I just try to have simple common sense approaches to these type of problems that are out there, and the simple common sense approach to this is, hey, we got a problem. First of all, we need to secure the borders we talked about. Second of all, we should enforce the laws that we have there. Whatever the laws are that we have in our country right now that deals with people that are here illegally, let's enforce them. And then the third thing is, let's find out why there is a problem and why is there a problem. I'm glad we can have this dialogue here today. The problem is we have people in other countries that want to come into America because they feel that it's a better way they can improve their lives. There are probably other reasons too, but a lot of them is for that. We as a country have a need for additional workers in certain areas of the economy. I've mentioned before how just in Nevada and Yerington there's an onion farmer that because he can't get enough people here in America to work the onion farms, he imports legal immigrants and he brings them in there. So there is a need for some workers. There's people that want to come in here legally. Why don't we make it easier for people to do so? Why is it such a burdensome, time-consuming, and costly manner? I've said that we should revise the INS laws, become more reasonable in how we apply them, and then that would solve some, not all of the problems. But that's a common sense approach, and I don't think anybody would disagree with me.
What do we do about children who are brought here at a very young age and grow up in the United States?
Yeah.
What's the solution?
That's always the toughest issue out there, because those children that came here, most of them at a young age, that they didn't make a conscious decision of what they're doing or not doing. They're here and they're acclimated to the things that are going on here in our country, and it's a tough answer. There have been some proposals out there. I've came out in favor of part of the DREAM Act dealing with going into the military and serving for your country. I think anybody who's willing to serve in the military for our country should have a path to citizenship. Senator Rubio was coming up with another proposal before President Obama came out with his unilateral executive order of what he did. And I was anxious to hear what Senator Rubio had to propose. He was talking about allowing people to stay in the country legally if they fell into certain qualifications and so forth. And his approach never came out because the president decided to go alone on it and not work in a bipartisan manner with the legislature. I look forward to going to Washington and trying to find an answer to that very, very sensitive and serious issue.
I would note that there's a small group of people supporting the DREAM Act who are outside the building protesting your candidacy.
I'm sure they support my opponent, and I'm sure that's why they're out there protesting right now.
Duly noted.
We know how this works.
But at the same time, should remedies like the DREAM Act be in place to give these young people a path to citizenship?
I just discussed that.
Yeah, you just talked about the notion of military service.
No, I talked about different options. The military service, I think, would be one. I think there's other things that should be on the table dealing with community service, the service for our country. And Senator Rubio was coming up with some proposals that, again, I think everybody on the Republican side was anxious to see, and so we can get a resolution to it. But we never got that point. When I get back to Washington, D.C., I look forward to working with all of them, and we'll have more discussion on that. I can't answer any more than that for you.
So would you support the DREAM Act if it's
There's several different DREAM Acts that have been out there, and there's several different provisions of them, as I just mentioned to you. We can beat the drum over the same horse. Dealing with the military, and if you go in and have military service, yes, I would support that. For you just to go to college and say you went to college and now you should be granted citizenship, I've said before I'm not in favor of that. There are other things that you can do that maybe that you do some type of service for your community that we would be in favor for. Let's put it on the table and have a discussion for it. Again, President Obama in 2008 said he was going to pass comprehensive immigration reform in his first year of office. He had one-party rule during that first year and a half. He passed health care instead. He passed a stimulus package instead. He ignored the immigration issues, and that's why we're facing the problem we're facing today. And for him and my opponent to want to use that as a negative to me is just disingenuous.
The election has also focused on the future of Medicare and Social Security. What would you do to ensure that these programs survive?
Well, I mean, Social Security, there's the first thing we need to do, and it's going to apply to both of them, but let's talk about Social Security primarily. We need to raise the age limit for people that are going to collect Social Security benefits. When they passed Social Security in the 1930s, the age life expectancies for American people were 19 years less than it is now, and the age requirement to collect Social Security has only gone up 2 years. So again, common sense would tell you that there's a big discrepancy there, and that needs to change. Dealing with the Medicare provisions, the first and foremost is we've made a promise to our seniors, actually all the citizens that have paid into the Medicare provisions, that they're going to have this medical treatment when they get older. Now, my dad's 82 years old. He's had 2 very serious surgeries. He actually had one of his insurance lapse because he didn't pay it in time, and he was relying upon Medicare to make the payments for these things. If he didn't have that, he wouldn't have been able to have had those surgeries, and very well may not have been alive right now. I understand how important that is, and I pledged in writing that I will not do anything to affect the benefits for Social Security or Medicare recipients that are currently there. Now, what do we do for people that are at a younger age? And I think that's where the question. Well, first of all, let's go back. My opponent, on the other hand, I guess when he was on the show, he kept saying all the different things I believed in. I try to stay away from that with my opponent because I don't know everything he believes in. And he doesn't know everything I believe in. All he does is misrepresent him. But I will make this one statement because he keeps attacking me on Social Security. On Medicare. He supports Obamacare. Obamacare cuts $716 billion out of Medicare right now for the current enrollees right now. And of that, much of that's going to come out of Medicare Advantage, in which 30% of Medicare recipients in Nevada have, so they're going to lose that. In addition, Obamacare has 15 unelected bureaucrats that are going to determine how to cut costs and savings of Medicare, which is going to be, they're going to determine what type of services and what doctors they're going to be able to use, because a lot of them aren't going to do it. So he already affects the current Medicare recipients, which I think is the worst thing you could possibly have. Now, on my end, I'm going to protect the current Medicare recipients, and then people under 55 and younger, we have to find a solution for them. And again, there's been smart people on both sides of the aisle that have spent years reviewing the information to determine the best approaches. The one that Congressman Ryan has stated in his second proposal sounds to me like the best one out there. Now, again, the Democrats want to mischaracterize and call it a voucher program. It's not. You have the option. You have the option of staying in the current Medicare program or take a voucher and have personal insurance, just like the ones the congressmen and senators have. So you could either have the same type of insurance the congressmen and senators have, or any other type of insurance that falls into the voucher program, or you could have Medicare. I think that sounds like a pretty good approach. My only question is, how is that going to be paid for, and how are we going to sustain the length of Medicare, which right now is supposed to run out in 2024. I haven't seen all the numbers. I don't see how it's all going to be paid for, but I'm looking forward to going back to Washington discussing that. On the other hand, my opponent wants it to continue the way it is, which means Medicare is going to end in 2024. That's not the right approach.
How do you respond when critics say that allowing traditional Medicare to continue in any way means that the government will end up paying for the sickest and most expensive people, and the healthier seniors will just get better deals with private insurance?
We pay into the Medicare program to have medical treatment when we get older. So it isn't the government paying for it, we paid for it.
So that's it.
Yeah, we paid for it, just like we did Social Security. We should get the benefits we were promised. You know, the problem we really had is when they raided the lockbox for these programs, and this was done by President Johnson in the 1960s, and said, hey, this money that was being paid into Social Security and so forth, we're going to go in and spend it now to create the Great Society. So they start spending all this money, and Republicans alike have got into office and have spent more and more money. And now all the money that we were supposed to pay for those programs are gone instead of staying in the lockbox. That's where the problem was. Let's get back to fiscal responsibility, where we're not spending future people's money, and you got an answer. The worst thing you do is you break the promise to people that have paid into this thing their whole lives, and all of a sudden we say, well, now we're going to take it from you.
Danny Tarkanian is the Republican candidate for Nevada's 4th Congressional District. Danny Tarkanian, thanks. Good having you here.
God, time's flying. I thought we were just beginning.
Time has flown.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
Thank you very much, sir. Appreciate your being here. There is more conversation to come. This is KNPR's State of Nevada.
Support for Nevada Public Radio comes from the Forum Shops at Caesars, 160 specialty shops and restaurants. Open daily 10 a.m. to 11 p.m., Friday and Saturday until midnight. Information at theforumshops.com or the shopping line at 893-4800. From Bank of Nevada, building alliances for growth with Southern Nevada businesses and communities. Bank of Nevada, forward together. Information at bankofnevada.com, member FDIC. And from Vegas Valley Book Festival, keynote speakers include Jennifer Egan, author of A Visit from the Goon Squad, Saturday, November 3rd, 3:30 p.m. at the historic 5th Street School Auditorium. Information at VegasValleyBookFestival.org. I'm Rick Andrews. Good morning, here with Chris Batanti.
Good morning. Thank you, Rick. We are here in the midst of our fall membership campaign, the 4th day of the campaign, and we've been pacing pretty steady, but we would like to wrap up this campaign as short as possible and raise the dollars needed to make it possible for Nevada Public Radio to continue to deliver critical news and information that we all rely on. So right now, Barrick Gold is going to match your pledge dollar for dollar. Nevada Public Radio area, we are doing all we can to invite listeners and businesses, including Barrett Gold, to do their part, and they have stepped up. So right now, the size of Barrett Gold's gift only limited by the collected total of your giving. So let's work together. We can raise this money to get this membership campaign on track to close as quickly as possible. This is an opportunity to really knock back that tote board, but only when you call to make a pledge, 258-0505, or online at knpr.org.
Maybe you're thinking that the value you get from public radio is far more than $1 a day, and that a pledge at that amount is right for you. If so, you can personalize your own package of thank you gifts. You pick a mug, choose 3 $25 dining certificates, use 2 day sponsorship messages, and select either a tote bag or share your public radio pride with a t-shirt or sweatshirt. And just think, with this challenge in effect, a $365 pledge becomes $730. These thank you gifts are just our way of thanking you for being part of the funding solution at Nevada Public Radio. Every member and every pledge counts towards the goal. Call 258-0505 now, or visit us online at knpr.org.
Think of the stories that have been on our agenda locally: school system reform, the ongoing foreclosure crisis, and our stubborn unemployment rate. You've heard thoughtful reporting on those issues and participated in civil discussions on air and online.